Hello and welcome to Game Soup with Kayla and Chloe. This is a game design podcast where we throw ideas in a pot and see what's cooking. I'm Kayla. Chloe, how's it going?
It's good. It's weird that you're doing the intro, but
I like how you said, we don't need to make a big deal out of it. We can just start handing it off each other. And then immediately you were like, this is weird, and I
Don't
need
like
to
it.
mention it's weird. I think we'll stick handing off, but we'll maybe be like 4 weeks of us going,
not sure about this one. But yes,
How
I've had
have
a
you-
good little week. I've had more shifts at work because it's half term, so the cinema's busy. I did have one customer, an old lady, come up and ask, "Oh, what films have you got on?" And I said, "Well, the screen that we normally have all the like upcoming showtimes on isn't working, but I can read them off to you, or it's all on the website if you'd like to look on there." And she says, "Well, that's no good for someone my age. That's no good for us old folks looking on the website." And I'm like, you've had 30, 40 years to work out how to use the internet.
That is true. I was also going to say you offered to read them out to her.
Yeah. And then she's like, well, that's not... I don't appreciate you being very sarcastic about it. That's not what you did. And it's like, well,
Oh wait, you said that to her?
yeah, I didn't mean to. It just came out. So, if my bosses are listening, it's just a funny joke. Please don't discipline me again.
When you said you got disciplined at work and this story led in, I thought this was a quite unreasonable complaint, and I still think it was pointless and rude to complain about it. But
No, absolutely.
yes, that
I'd
was
have
probably
complained
a
about
bit
that myself.
sarcastic.
Like, like my bosses were like, "Yeah, we understand that you have a bit of a sense of humor about you, but like sometimes you got to learn your audience, Chloe." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I shouldn't have said it, but like,
Is your brain just not working properly? Just like, oh fuck, did I
listen."
say that out loud?
I was like 6 hours after painkillers. I'd been on my feet for like 7 hours straight. I,
Just, I've rarely seen people have moments of going like, "Oh shit, was that not my inner monologue?" That really
yeah,
sounds like what that is like.
I'm just like, sorry. I don't. I can't unsay it.
Yeah, this definitely feels like you just rolled, like rolled very low on a social check.
Yeah. Friggin' saying a
Just,
slur in Disco Elysium ass.
you on Blue Sky posted a James Bond game idea. Do you want to talk about that? Because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, so Weird Science, the magazine, did a post about how Amazon MGM have acquired the James Bond license. And so they were like,
So,
oh, well, coming soon to tabletop, I guess, probably, or video games or whatever the fuck. And
so they'd owned the brand already, but they didn't have the rights to make the films.
yeah,
And they've just restructured it so now Amazon controls it. So which probably will mean there'll be loads more licensed stuff.
schlock.
I feel like RPGs and video games weren't that tightly controlled anyway, but it's like we'll probably get like fucking the Q sequel series.
The Moneypenny Files, yeah. Yeah, I mean, me and Alyssa have been kicking this idea around for a while, but it was like an asymmetric war game where one side is just Bond and like maybe some other MI6 guys, but probably not. And the other side is whoever the baddie is of this film. And like I think you have lots of different boxes of like, oh, in this one it's Blofeld, in this one it's Goldfinger, you know? Um, and Bond has to sneak into the enemy base to schmooze women and punch disabled people who are the villains and do grapple attacks. And then the other side, the baddies, have to just kill Bond. But of course, you can't just kill Bond. You have to capture him and do a cool torture sequence. So he gets 2 chances.
And we're back. after a disconnect in our thing. So we're actually back at a different recording time because I then couldn't get back in and was stressed. So we're probably going to move on from the James Bond idea, but I do think it's very cool. I think it was a fun and silly idea for like a licensed thing, but also I think it's an idea you could definitely get away with as a parody because you're doing the whole.
We've kicked around ideas like it before as like a Venture Bros, like you are the tough guy bodyguard going in to like rescue your like whoever hires you. And I could see it like, oh yeah, you've got this tough guy knockoff secret agent, and then you've got all these supervillains or whatever. You've got to stop the giant laser going off to blow up the moon or some shit like that. Like I could see a bunch of different boxes for like, oh, in this one it's a new baddie, and you've got a sidekick this time or something.
Yeah,
like
I definitely think you could cut really close to the Bond bone though, and get away with it.
Yeah, I think you'd get away with this as like a board game thing, like, oh, each new box set comes with all the main rules, and here's a new baddie. So it's like, oh well, I don't want the Blofeld one, I want the Spectre one. I can't think of any Bond villains other than Blofeld.
Named two people very much linked together. But yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, that's the John Tide board game.
The what Tide?
John Tide. I was like, what would be your fake James Bond name for your knockoff? Like, why, that's John Tide. John Tide. Do you have any other ideas to go with, or do we want to go to a random word generator?
I think I did, but I've forgotten them, so...
I was thinking, because I watched The People's Joker recently.
Yeah, they were doing a showing of that locally, but then we forgot to go.
You should try and see it. It's very good. I enjoy it. I also realized while watching, because it does a lot of like different references or parodies of things, I was like, damn, I really have seen like most of the Batman films. Ironically enough, other than Joker and various films which were more the big reference. But I was just like, I'm getting a lot of these very specifically. But it got me thinking about parody a bit. And I wonder if there's maybe something fun in like making a game that is about parodying something.
Yeah, so is it like you, the player, pick what you're going to parody, and then it's like... I don't know, I feel like this will lean almost immediately into, and then you go into other things, and it's like a parody of the other thing.
I was more thinking, I guess, at first, that your idea is, the idea of the game is like you are being pitched as like, you are the people making this parody. And it's maybe a bit a game about like making a story that we maybe assume is in TV, or maybe it's, more just that like you are telling the story of these characters, but part of the game is about the fact that you're doing this. And so maybe then there's something about like, maybe part of the setup game is in some way like breaking down the property, breaking down the elements that are worth skewering because, you know, there's maybe something you want to like attack about them versus things where it's like more loving.
Yeah. So it's like you're trying to tell a story in your version of whatever property this is. But I think like you could have like a system for like, oh, if you go too close to whatever the canon of whatever the thing is, like the lawyers get you. So yeah.
But I also think there should be a way where you also do just have to have a random roll every now and then where it's like, oh, you can have done everything right, but the lawyers are still sending you a cease and desist.
Yeah.
You just lose a couple of turns or whatever, and then it will get sorted out, but like they just can choose to do that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's also then a thing, like the thing that's very good about The People's Joker is it's not like plot-wise, its parody of that is using it as a vehicle to do autobiography. So I guess if I was taking this much inspiration from the People's Joker, it would then be like, okay, like, but what is your story actually about that's not to do with this property at all?
Yeah, it's like you've got to take whatever your favorite film or whatever it is, and then somehow make that an autobiography.
Yeah, I don't know. I like this. I think it would be a very difficult pitch to get this game. So going like, oh yeah, it's a fun parody game. And the people are like, oh, that sounds cool. So what, we just do like a Superman riff? Yeah, but we also need to make the Superman riff about your childhood trauma.
Yeah, it's like what phrase did your Uncle Ben say to you that made you be you? It's like you don't have great power, so I don't know. With like good baristering comes great espressos. I don't know. Like what's your
Well,
thing?
I mean, but I think it's often then you get placed. The you gets placed into this character, so it's like, oh, it's a version of Superman, but for some but like in reworking the plot, it's like, oh yeah, it's Superman, but like if they sent Superman to Earth just because they thought he had a bad vibe. And it's like, oh, okay, I see. You're giving Superman like your parental abandonment issues. Nice, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel this would be a fun. This would be a fun game to play if you were in the level of people who just wanted to be a bit fucked about it.
Yeah, I think you've got to be a bit like grungy and like self-parody able. Like you got to be like comfortable with yourself. It's like a post therapy. You unlock this game.
I'm actually now realizing I feel in a weird way what I'm pitching. So I was like, well, what is this game written as? And then I'm like, I don't think I'm pitching. By pitching a game, I am pitching a game, obviously, but I don't think I'm pitching like a book text that is the rules for a game. I think I'm pitching a podcast where this is the premise of like short seasons, where it's like you get on like one or two guests and it's like, cool, we're going to do a parody of Superman. Once again, using the guests' real traumas,
Yeah.
however much they want to do. I feel you need like stand-up comics here in this, to be honest. You need someone who like is just used to doing that in front of people anyway.
Yeah.
And then it's like also as part of the game, you're figuring out the mechanics and then doing this parody as an actual play.
So This Is Your Life Path season 3 confirmed.
It is very. It's got the similar interests of what I like about Life Path, but I guess more if I took more influence from being like a fucked alt comic rather than Life Path, which takes more of its influences, I guess, from I don't know exactly what my approach does, but I guess, enjoying interview shows or whatever. But yeah, parody the People's Podcast would be that one, which I think would be fun. Before I think we should go to random generator assume. I did actually have another idea the other day, which is a bit pretentious, but bear with me.
What's new?
Just making sure that picked up and wasn't too high pitched.
Just normal noises.
Do you know the film Rashomon?
Yeah, and also the Simpsons joke about it, which is the only thing I can remember about it.
That's all right. I thought in my memory, you remembered more.
Yeah, there you go. That's the Simpsons joke.
Yeah, so Rashomon, for people who don't know, is a film by Akira Kurosawa, who's also like Seven Samurai and stuff. And basically, it involves like a story where there's like a woman and her husband and a wandering bandit. And like the sort of facts established are like the woman and the bandit have sex and the husband is dead. But in each of their tellings, the details are different and it's casting around blame and stuff. And a lot of things take this concept from Rashomon. And I was thinking like, oh, is there maybe a game where you are retelling the same story from different perspectives?
Yeah, I could see that. It's like, oh, you're different characters. You have like written on your sheet you're more inclined to see the good in people, or like you think everybody's lying, or
Yeah. Or maybe it's also a thing like maybe because in Rashomon it's like they're on trial, so they're all giving this testimony, including, I should say, this is a great thing. Not if you haven't seen Rashomon, you might not know, including the dead man gives testimony. He is summoned by a medium to give testimony. But yeah, you're all giving testimony, and I think maybe it's like, yeah, the game's facilitator acts as the judge, and then when a person gives testimony, like they get to GM the retelling of that. And they get to like maybe like make some suggestions to how other people play their characters, and they get to set difficulties for roles and stuff to try and create a telling that is more favorable to them.
Yeah, and you're like trying to convince the jury that what your version is the true version or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that may be like the, I guess, your character's motivations in telling.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's. Yeah, I think this thing about like you have a lot of narrative control when you're the teller. I guess you'd probably have to decide like, oh, what are the core facts of this thing, of your story? Maybe you do that together, or maybe this comes with like scenarios.
Yeah, I think like you have a bunch of scenarios in the book or the box, whatever this is, and it's like in this scenario there is a woman, a man, a bandit, and the woman and the man are married, and somebody dies in the scene.
Yeah, sure. Like if you want to hew very close there, you do that. Or you could do other ones where you're presenting some kind of different situation. You give how the characters are connected to each other, what are the core facts, and then I feel there's maybe some sort of scene structure stuff about like, I don't think this is just a storytelling game, though maybe it could be. Like you get given these facts, and actually instead of doing the full flashback, it is just about how you tell the story to this judge. I think it's funner if you get to do the flashbacks, and then people have to play out their characters specifically through the eyes of someone who they have conflict with.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I see all women as sluts, so in my retelling of them, all the women are flirting at me specifically.
Yeah, I think maybe it's like maybe it's like a point pool at the start, and you get to like spend that before you're telling that like affects certain things. Like that's, I guess, limiting how much it can be, like how far it twists away from the facts before you get there.
But it's like the more you twist away from the facts, it's like, oh, your retelling like has less influence on the judge or something. Like the more you go away from the actual truth, maybe.
Yeah, I feel maybe the judging. In my mind, I was like, maybe there's no mechanics for the judging, and it is just whoever is facilitating the game gets to make that call at the end based on some stuff they decide about their character, the judge.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, we have a bunch of different like pre-written judges, so it's like, oh yeah, the judge is more likely to believe men.
Yeah, that could also work if you wanted to get more into more pre-written capsule stuff. This would be fun, I think. It's not quite LARPy, because like I say, actually I feel it's a weird thing, where I feel you almost start in a pseudo LARP setting, like one player is the judge, the other player is telling their story to them, but then from that you zoom, like via the way flashbacks work in film or stuff, you tell up the flashbacks by jumping into tabletop role-playing game rather than that.
Yeah,
I think that's
like
a fun sort of
how Die has its multiple layers of abstraction, where you have the players at the table and the players in the game.
I think this would be one that you'd want to probably like playtest a lot, and I also feel it would be like. I think this is one where if I wrote this game, I might have to try out like at least one LARP to get more of a perspective on that. It should be. I made that sound like I hate the idea of LARP. I don't. I've just never done it.
Where do they do LARPs in England? It's all in London.
Oh right, yeah. I was like, I see LARPs and stuff all the time, and then you added the all in London detail, and as you know,
like, oh,
we're famous.
We're doing one in the north.
London-based.
Yeah, it's 2 hours south from me, but okay, thanks.
Yeah, pretty pretty easy to, I guess, find stuff to do. So do we want to go to a random word generator?
I mean, I'm pretty happy with the episode, I'm not going to lie.
I'll level with you because of where we cut off in the last one. We're at 20 minutes.
20 minutes is fine, baby. Listen, if you like the podcast, you can support us on Patreon. There's a link in the description.
Yeah, I'll also add another thing. If you like the podcast, listen, our episode length varies a bit. We've gone as long as 40, and we've gone under 20 a couple of times. Like, we've got 17-minute episodes and stuff. Feel free to, email Chloe at, what's the Gmail? Is it gamesouppodcast@gmail.com?
If you go on my website, there's an email link there.
Yeah, feel free to email Chloe or, I don't know, message either of us on socials and say, what kind of length of episode you prefer. Because we obviously have very little idea. We've met some members of the audience, some listeners, but we've, I don't know. I genuinely don't necessarily always know what the audience thinks of us. But what were our games in this episode? So we had
James Bond, the tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah. I pitched a podcast.
Yeah, the People's Podcast.
The People's Podcast. I think it's a good idea. I don't know if I'd be able to get the people to do it with me.
Yeah.
I also don't feel like I have the time to sincerely get into actual playing. Now you never know. And a game that is Rashomon.
Rashomon,
which is it is under copyright, so it would need to not be that if made.
Okay, but that's pretty close to that's going to be getting up to public domain, right? Rashomon release.
No,
date.
Because I think for actually I've realized I have no idea how it works in Japan. I
1950.
feel like Japan is likely. In my mind, just because I've never heard differently, I assume Japan is like a lot of the EU countries where it's death plus 50 years or whatever, and I think Kurosawa did not die.
Many pre-1995 Japanese films are considered to be public domain in Japan.
Ooh.
So, bosh, Rashomon game, we can get away with that. We can put the fucking actors on there, baby.
I'm not convinced, but sure, yeah. This is a good one. Anyway, thank you for listening to Game Soup. See you next week.
Bye.